The first time Emily Carter turned the new brass key in the front door, the lock clicked like a promise. The house on Linden Court smelled faintly of sawdust and lemon oil, the way new beginnings sometimes do. Wide windows spilled afternoon light across pale oak floors. The kitchen counters gleamed like a calm ocean. Upstairs, the master bedroom waited with a balcony that caught the breeze from the river. Her parents had stood in the doorway behind her, Tom and Julia, both grinning in that goofy, teary way they reserve for graduations and Christmas mornings, and said, "For you, Em. A home, not alone. No strings." Emily had laughed and cried in the same breath. "You can't just give me a house." "We can," Tom said, patting his chest, "because we've been saving for 30 years to do exactly this once." "Consider it your wedding gift," Julia added. "A place where good things will grow." Emily thought of Daniel then. Daniel Miller with his careful smile and quiet plans, his thrift shop jackets and meticulous budgets. The way he squeezed her hand twice whenever he was nervous. He didn't have a house. He rode the T and praised libraries and talked about value, the way some people talked about sunsets. She loved that steadiness, or thought she did. It looked like character from a distance. They would marry in 2 months. In the meantime, Emily lived among boxes, drinking coffee cross-legged on the floor, tapping paint swatches to the walls. She texted Daniel pictures of everything. Light fixtures, drawer pulls, a ridiculous velvet chair she found on clearance. He responded with thumbs-up emojis and practical advice. Wait for the Labor Day sale. You could do without a chair. We should talk budget before you buy more things, just because. She brushed off the pinch behind the words. He wasn't wrong. She'd always been a little extravagant with color, with candles, with second desserts. When the Millers came to see the house, Emily set out a plate of pastries and a pitcher of iced tea. She wore a soft blue dress her mother said made her look like sky after rain. She wanted the visit to go well, needed it too. Daniel's parents were driving in from the countryside. He'd said, "Not really city people." His older brother Curtis and Curtis's wife would join if the baby naps long enough. The doorbell rang in a cluster, one long press, 2 quick jabs, like a battering ram. Daniel's mother barreled in first, Lorraine, sturdy and sunbaked, her perm an iron crown. She scanned the foyer as if looking for defects. Behind her, Daniel's father, Rick, smelled faintly of gasoline and used his boot to steady a collapsed cardboard box before stepping over it. Curtis brought a stroller the size of a compact car. His wife, Penny, offered Emily a swift, distracted smile and maneuvered the stroller's wheel across the threshold with the focus of a pilot docking a shuttle. "This is fortified," Lorraine said, gesturing at the gate and the discreet security plaque near the hedges. "Like a jail with nicer paint. It's a safe neighborhood," Emily said, a little laugh, a little pride. "My parents wanted to keep you worried about thieves," Rick muttered, picking up a pastry without asking. Flakes fell on the hall table. He licked his thumb, pressed it to a crumb, and flicked it to the floor. Daniel reached for Emily's elbow, the double squeeze. "They drove a long way," he whispered. "Be gracious." "I am," she whispered back, and then louder, "Let me show you the kitchen." Lorraine didn't look so much as prowl. She opened drawers, rapped knuckles against the countertop, lifted the corner of a new rug. "Granite," she said, unimpressed. "Do you know how to clean granite properly? It stains. City people buy fancy surfaces and then ruin them with tomato sauce." "I cook a lot," Emily said, still smiling. "I'll manage." "And the master?" Curtis asked, as if requesting a menu item. "Where are you putting the crib when we stay here for the wedding week?" Emily blinked. "When you stay here?" Penny parked the stroller in the middle of the kitchen like a flag. "It's just so much easier with the baby, and hotels are a ripoff. We can take the big room. You two can use a guest room. It'll be cozy cute, like a slumber party." "We have plenty of space at the Riverstone Inn," Emily replied, gentler than she felt. "It's close by." Lorraine's eyebrows met. "So this palace sits half empty while family pays strangers? Ridiculous. Also, you should leave your doors unlocked. Neighbors don't like feeling you think they're criminals." Emily pictured the gate, the plaque, her father's hand on her shoulder when the realtor handed over the keys. She inhaled through the nose, counted to 3. "I'll show you the guest rooms." "Upstairs," Sunlight spilled across the hallway like honey. Lorraine veered straight into the master and put both palms on the bedspread, as if blessing it. "We'll take this one," she announced. Rick snores. "He needs space." Daniel laughed in that apologetic way she'd started to hate. "Mom." "What?" Lorraine said. "You two aren't married yet. You can be modest for a week. Builds virtue." Emily felt the floor tilt. The house was hers. The deed was hers. The bed was hers. She thought of her mother's careful handwriting on an index card labeled first grocery list, tucked into the pantry. Coffee, eggs, salt, something sweet. She thought of the evening she'd fallen asleep on the empty bedroom carpet, face turned to the balcony breeze, believing she had crossed into a life with soft edges. "This room is for Emily," Tom had said the day they signed the papers. "It's her refuge." Emily willed her voice to stay even. "The master is not available. There's a guest suite downstairs near the patio. It has its own bath." Lorraine's mouth thinned. "You sound like a landlord." "I sound like a homeowner," Emily said. Rick took out a cigarette, twirled it between two fingers, and tucked it behind his ear when he met Emily's look. "So fussy," he said. "You city folks and your rules. When Curtis and Penny move closer for the baby's preschool next year, we'll need more permanent arrangements. This 1 inch," he jerked his chin toward Daniel, "is hopeless in apartments. He needs stability." "I have stability," Daniel said with a soft laugh, trying to make a bridge of air. "We're figuring things out, Dad." "Good," Rick replied. "Figure that the deed goes to family. Curtis has a kid. Needs come first." Silence fell heavy as summer air before a storm. Penny checked her phone. Curtis rocked the stroller. Somewhere, the fridge hummed like a distant engine. Emily straightened. "The deed stays with me. My parents gave me this home. Not a will see, not a group project. A gift." Lorraine turned, eyes sharp. "Your parents think money solves everything. They didn't raise you to respect elders." "On the contrary," Emily said, feeling heat crawl up her neck. "They raised me to respect boundaries." Daniel's hand hovered an inch from her wrist, then retreated. "Maybe we can talk about this later, Em. No need to get everyone riled." "I'm calm," she said, and was surprised to find it true. "Calm like a lake with ice forming. I will not be bullied in my own house." Lorraine's laugh was a single hard bark. "In our family, we share. You Carter people hoard." Tom's words, Julia's tears, the key turning, click, promise, flashed through Emily's mind. She met Lorraine's stare and didn't look away. "Then perhaps," she said, "we aren't the same family." The stroller squeaked. The cigarette behind Rick's ear fell to the carpet. Daniel's face went pale, then pink. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Tea?" Emily asked brightly, because there was nothing else to do, and because even a fortress needed hospitality. "There's lemon. And honey." The first night in her new home should have been the happiest moment of Emily's life. She had walked through the freshly painted rooms with a mixture of pride and excitement, imagining quiet mornings with Curtis, coffee on the porch, and maybe one day children playing in the backyard. Instead, her dreams collapsed as the sound of heavy footsteps and raised voices echoed through the hallway. Curtis's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, along with his brother Luke and Luke's wife, Angela, had arrived with bags in their hands. They didn't knock. They didn't wait to be invited in. They simply marched through the doorway as though the house were theirs by right. Emily froze in the living room, clutching her wedding bouquet, now slightly wilted. Mrs. Miller's eyes scanned the polished hardwood floors and the expensive chandelier. She sniffed, unimpressed. "Too sterile," she said. "And these gates outside, they make this place feel like a prison. We don't live like this. Curtis, tell her we need more open doors and friendly neighbors." Curtis shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Emily's stomach tightened. Then Mr. Miller dropped his duffel bag onto the sofa and announced, "We'll be taking the master bedroom upstairs. It's only proper that the heads of the family get the main room. Curtis and Emily can use one of the smaller ones." Emily blinked in shock. "Excuse me? This is my house." Mr. Miller lit a cigarette, ignoring her words, and wandered into the kitchen. A thin trail of smoke curled toward the ceiling. "This will do just fine," he muttered, as though assessing property he intended to purchase. Angela, Luke's wife, sat down and opened her purse, acting as though she had lived there for years. "We'll need one of the guest rooms for our little boy when he visits," she said flatly. "Luke thinks it'll be good for him to have stability here." Emily felt the world tilting under her feet. Every sentence from the Millers chipped away at her sense of safety. Her parents had gifted her this house in Boston's suburbs as a wedding present. They wanted her to have security, independence, and a future. Curtis, by contrast, hadn't contributed a single dollar to the home or the wedding. He had no car, no savings, no plan. Emily had ignored her doubts because she thought love was enough. But love was not what she felt now. "Curtis," she said softly but firmly, "your parents can't just walk in here and claim the master bedroom. This isn't a motel. This house was a gift from my family to me. To us. But it's not theirs." Curtis avoided her gaze. They just need some time to adjust. They don't mean any harm." Mrs. Miller folded her arms, glaring. "Don't you raise your voice at my son. We're family now. That means what's his is ours and what's yours should be shared. That's what family does." Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. Her instinct screamed to set boundaries, but Curtis's silence betrayed where his loyalty lay. Finally, she drew in a breath. "No," Emily said, her voice shaking but firm. "Family doesn't mean taking what doesn't belong to you. Family means respect. If you can't give that to me in my own home, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." A stunned silence filled the room. Mr. Miller slammed his fist against the dining table. "You think you're better than us because your parents gave you this house? You'll learn quickly that a wife's job is to support her husband, not humiliate his family." Emily stood straighter, her fear hardening into steel. "Then maybe you should teach your son how to stand on his own before demanding what isn't his." Curtis finally spoke, his voice weak. "Emily, maybe just apologize. It's not worth upsetting them." Her heart broke in that moment. She realized this wasn't just about an argument over bedrooms or furniture. It was about respect, loyalty, and whether Curtis would ever truly stand beside her. That night, Emily didn't sleep. She lay awake in the guest room, her own guest room, listening to the laughter of Curtis's family echoing down the hall. Her wedding bouquet sat abandoned in the corner, the petals shriveling into brittle remnants. She had wanted a new life. Instead, she had inherited a nightmare. Morning arrived like a verdict. Emily found a note taped to the fridge in a slanted, impatient hand. "Breakfast at 7. Laundry on Tuesdays. Windows open by noon. No shoes on rugs." At the bottom, someone had added, "Master bath is ours. M. Miller." Mr. Miller's cigarette had burned a crescent into the oak tray by the coffee maker. A gray smear of ash trailed across the counter like a signature. Emily stood very still, willing her hands not to shake. The house, her house, smelled faintly of smoke and someone else's cologne. Curtis wandered in, hair mussed, eyes puffy. "Morning," he mumbled, reaching for a mug, as if the kitchen had always been his family's camp. "Did you write this?" Emily asked, tapping the note. He skimmed it, winced. "They're old school. Let's calm them down." "They don't calm me," she said evenly. "They replace my name with rules I didn't make." Before he could answer, Mrs. Miller swept in, already combing the pantry with a narrowed gaze. "You have quinoa but not flour? How are we supposed to make biscuits without basics?" She didn't wait for a reply. "Open a window, would you? This place needs air." "This place needs respect," Emily said, and she was surprised by how steady it sounded. In the dining room, Mr. Miller spread himself across the head of the table, reading a tabloid he'd brought from the corner store. Luke and Angela scrolled their phones, murmuring about a school calendar for a child who wasn't there. No one asked Emily to sit. No one said good morning. "Curtis," Mr. Miller called without looking up. "Your brother's boy will take the blue room. We measured. His race car bed will fit." Emily set a fresh mug down harder than she meant to. "That room is for my sister when she visits." She turned to Curtis. "We talked about that." Mr. Miller finally lifted his eyes. They were the same tired brown as Curtis's, but meaner. "There's a family to consider, daughter-in-law. Stability. Roots. You can move the sister to the basement. The basement floods in March. Then fix the foundation," he said, as if ordering lunch. Mrs. Miller crossed to the chandelier and pinched a crystal, judging its worth. While we're fixing things, we'll need the master closet cleared by tonight. Angela's dresses can't wrinkle. Emily laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. No. The single syllable skated across the table and hung there. Angela stopped scrolling. Luke looked up. Mr. Miller folded his paper. Even the air seemed to pause. Mrs. Miller's smile thinned. Excuse me. No, Emily repeated, stepping into the silence. You are guests. Temporary ones. The master bedroom is mine and Curtis's. The closets are ours. The blue room is mine to assign. The kitchen is mine to arrange. If you'd like biscuits, I'll buy flour. But you don't post schedules in a house that doesn't belong to you. Curtis rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe we can. Curtis, she said without looking at him, stand with me. His breath hitched. He didn't move. Mrs. Miller's voice cooled. Do you know what marriage means? It means we share. We help. We bring family in. I did, Emily said softly. I brought your son in. That's where the door closes. Mr. Miller slapped his palm against the table. The china rattled. That door closes when I say so. No, Emily said, and the word felt like turning a key from the inside. It closes when I lock it. Luke's chair scraped back. You don't talk to our father like that. Then your father can learn to talk to me like this isn't a barn, Emily replied. No more smoking inside. No more claiming rooms. No more lists. If you like to stay 3 more nights while you look for a hotel, I'll even book it for you. But the master stays ours. The house stays mine. Angela cleared her throat. We can contribute rent. It came out small, and for a flicker of a second, Emily almost felt sorry for her. This isn't about rent, Emily said. It's about boundaries. Mr. Miller stood up, taller than she'd realized, his belt buckle glinting. Boundaries? That deed should be in family hands. Curtis, tell her we'll secure this house for your future. Get it into your brother's name until you two prove you can handle it. It was so absurd Emily had no words. She reached into the drawer, pulled out a file folder she'd placed there the week they closed. Deed copies, insurance, a letter from her parents. She slid the top page across the table with her finger planted on her name. This is my signature, she said. Not yours. Mrs. Miller's cheeks went blotchy. Such pride. Such selfishness. You think money makes you a wife? Money makes you cold. Money makes a mortgage, Emily said. Being a wife makes me a partner. And being in my home makes you accountable to my rules. The doorbell rang. 2 crisp notes that felt like a rescue. Emily excused herself and found her father on the porch, a paper bag of bagels in his hand, eyes taking in the scuffed threshold, the ash on the mat, the open windows in January. You okay? Thomas murmured. No, Emily said, and the truth of it steadied her. But I will be. He squeezed the bag once, as if compressing grief into something edible. Want me to go in? Not yet. She squared her shoulders. Stand by. They returned to find Mr. Miller surveying the staircase like a foreman. Curtis drifted toward Emily, not quite close enough to be counted. Dad, he started, voice fragile. Maybe we should take the guest room and... Mr. Miller rounded on him. Grow a spine. Something in Emily broke free. He would have one, she said, if you stop trying to wear it. A vein jumped in Mr. Miller's temple. You're not fit to run a home. And you're not welcome to run mine, she said. You have until noon to gather your things. After that, a locksmith is coming. Curtis, if they stay, you go with them. He stared at her, stunned. You can't mean that. I mean every inch of this house, she said. And I'm done sharing it with people who wipe their ash on my floors. Mrs. Miller reached for Curtis's arm. You're choosing her temper over your blood. Emily waited. 1 breath, 2, a lifetime, while Curtis's gaze flicked between faces like a man trying to read the tide. Let's cool off, he said at last. We'll talk tonight. Thomas stepped forward, his presence filling the doorway with quiet authority. There won't be any talk if my daughter is disrespected again. This was a gift, not a surrender. Mr. Miller snorted. A gift with strings. Only the string of basic manners, Thomas said, which seemed to have frayed. By noon, suitcases lined the hall. Emily watched as Angela zipped a bulging bag. eyes damp but grateful when Emily handed her a card for a decent mid-range hotel nearby. Luke wouldn't meet her gaze. Mrs. Miller muttered prayers that sounded suspiciously like curses. Mr. Miller shouldered his duffel, paused at the threshold, and tapped the doorframe as if claiming the wood. "First real storm," he said. "You'll wish you had a man's hand on this place." Emily rested her palm against the opposite frame. "I already do," she said, and she meant her own. They left. The locksmith arrived at 1. By 2, every lock clicked new. By 3, the house exhaled, windows closed, counters wiped, a lemon brightness reclaiming the kitchen. Emily carried a small trash bag to the curb, tied it off, and stood under a sky the color of unpolished pewter. Curtis texted, "Dinner? We need to straighten this out." She replied, "Come at 7. Alone." At 6:58, she placed the deed folder on the table, set 2 plates, and put her phone on record, just in case. At 7, the bell chimed again. Curtis stepped in, hands empty, eyes wary. He began, "You embarrassed them." "They embarrassed themselves," she said. "Sit." He did. For a moment they were 2 kids again, eating cheap takeout on moving boxes, promising that love would be enough. But the boxes were gone, and so were the promises. "Do you want a marriage?" she asked. "Or do you want a family compound where I am the help?" "That's not fair." "It's precise," she said. "Choose." Curtis swallowed. "They're all I have." She nodded. "And this is all I have. My name on this deed, my peace in these rooms, my self-respect." She slid the folder toward him. "If you want a life here, you protect it with me. If you want their version, the door you refuse to close is still out there." He stared at the folder as if it were a court summons. When he finally spoke, the words were soft enough to bruise. "I can't turn my back on them." Emily's answer surprised her with how gentle it was. "Then don't. Just don't ask me to turn my back on myself." When the door shut behind him, the house was so quiet she could hear the tick of the thermostat. She gathered the plates, rinsed them, dried them, stacked them neatly. Then she took a roll of painter's tape, tore a strip, and pressed it to the floor just inside the front door. One pale blue line on dark wood. A line in the floorboards. Tomorrow, she would call her attorney, document everything, and send Curtis a copy of the guest policy she would henceforth enforce. Tonight, she would sleep in her own bed with the locks changed and the windows closed. A woman who had chosen the kind of family she could live with, one that started with herself. Outside, wind slipped through the hedges and moved on. Inside, the lemon brightness held. The email arrived at 9:12 a.m. Subject line, "Remittance due." Emily clicked, expecting a vendor notice. Instead, she found a spreadsheet. So petty it felt surgical. Balance owed by Emily Carter to Curtis Miller, relationship expenses. Street tacos, $214. Rideshare to concert, $18.65. Hoodie borrowed and lost, $29. Netflix password emotional damages, $7.99. Birthday brunch, split you promise $42. Miscellaneous, coffees, $8.33. Gas when you use my car, no date $744. Total due, $2,897.36, wire preferred. 2,897 cents. Not dollars, cents. He'd even bolded it, as if precision could make it sane. Emily stared at her monitor until the lines blurred. Then she laughed, quiet, incredulous, because how else do you hold a collapsing bridge with your bare hands? "Everything okay?" Priya appeared over the cubicle wall, brows knitting. "Curtis sent me an invoice," Emily said. "For love." Priya blinked. "Is there a SKU for bare minimum?" Before Emily could answer, the office intercom crackled. Emily Carter to reception. Her manager's voice, tight. She rounded the corner and saw them. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, planted on the lobby sofa like king and queen of a shabby court. Mr. Miller had a printed copy of the email. Mrs. Miller clutched a handbag large enough to smuggle a change of regime. 2 delivery drivers paused mid-hand truck. The receptionist mouthed, "Sorry." Mrs. Miller rose, voice pitched to Carrie. "There she is, the girl who thinks she's too good to pay her debts." Conversations froze. Screensaver starfields drifted across unattended monitors. Priya ghosted to Emily's side. Chin up. Mrs. Miller. Emily said evenly, "This is my workplace." "All the better," Mrs. Miller said. Witnesses. "We want the 2,897.36 cents your son is owed." A murmur rippled through reception. Cents? Mr. Miller fanned the printout. Itemized. Transparent. More honest than anything we've gotten from you. Emily opened her mouth, but Priya stepped forward, voice cool as January glass. "You know what's even more transparent? Hypocrisy." She reached into her tote, pulled out her checkbook with theatrical calm, and scribbled, "Here's $3,000. Overpay by a few dollars. Underpay by a few years. It's all the same when you're keeping score for selfies and street tacos." She tore the check free, flicked it so it spun, and it slapped against Mr. Miller's chest. Gasps. Then someone in the back, accounts receivable, actually clapped. Mrs. Miller bristled. "We're not beggars." "Great," Priya said sweetly. "Then return it." Also, she turned, voice ringing. "Curtis Miller has been emailing our employee personal bills during business hours and creating a hostile environment. HR, you catching this?" Amy from HR raised a hand weakly. "I am now." The elevator chimed. As if conjured by the sound of his name, Curtis stepped out in a wrinkled dress shirt and a tie that had seen better knocks. His eyes found the check, then Emily, then the growing crowd. This is out of control," he said, attempting a chuckle that landed like a coin in an empty jar. "You owe me at least the gas. And the brunch. And you said you'd split." "I split the mortgage while you went silent," Emily said, not moving. Mrs. Miller lunged for the moral high ground. "My son poured himself into you, and you paid him back with lawyers and locks." Priya's laugh was soft and lethal. "Your son poured himself into a Google sheet." Mr. Chen, the division director, materialized like a storm cloud. "Is this a joke?" he asked, eyes on the email. Curtis jutted his chin. "It's documentation." "It's grounds," Mr. Chen said, "for a conversation with HR about harassing an employee at work. And for the record, turning a corporate lobby into the people's court is a terrible networking strategy." The door spun again. A city inspector, clipboard, windbreaker, stepped through with a purposeful stride. The receptionist perked up. "Oh, you're early." "I'm here to review the safety complaint filed about a public disturbance," the inspector said, glancing over the scene. He took in the raised voices, the check, the crowd. "Who's the complainant?" Priya's finger rose. "That would be me." Curtis flushed. "This is personal." "Personal doesn't mean consequence-free," Emily said. "And since we're tallying, maybe we should tally the times you used my card for quick groceries that somehow included Bluetooth earbuds. Or the 4 months of utilities on my account. Or the deposit on your brother's apartment. Should I send an invoice in euros for flair?" Mrs. Miller sputtered. "Your parents gave you a house and you hoard it like a dragon. You think money makes you better than us." "No," Emily said. "It makes the roof not leak and the heat turn on. Respect makes us better. You keep failing that part." Curtis's bravado wavered. He looked to the glass doors as if an escape might swing open for him. It didn't. "Tell you what," Priya said, voice suddenly bright. She pulled out her phone, tapped, and projected a neat list onto the lobby screen. Purchases from Emily's shared card, dates, amounts. We did our own math. "Curtis, here's what you owe her." It starts with 4 figures. Silence hit harder than shouting. Mrs. Miller's mouth opened, closed. Mr. Miller swallowed. Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in bad water. The inspector clicked his pen. "This lobby isn't a courthouse. If you have claims, take them to small claims. Right now, you're obstructing a place of business." He turned to Mr. Chen. "You want to file a formal notice?" Mr. Chen's smile was all enamel. "Already did." Something in Curtis folded. The check in his father's hand looked suddenly heavy. He took a step back, then another. He said, softer, "Can we talk?" "Alone." Emily's heart surprised her by aching, just for a beat, for the version of him who'd carried boxes in the rain and called their place ours. That version wasn't here. This one had a ledger where his ribcage should be. "We're done talking in lobbies," she said. "Next time, we'll talk through counsel." Mrs. Miller snarled. You'll regret this. Emily held her gaze. Already did. That's why we're here. Security showed them out, firm, not rough. The doors closed with a swallow of the winter air. Conversations restarted in fits and starts, then steadied. Priya squeezed Emily's hand until bones answered bones. You okay? She asked. No, Emily said honestly. But I'm lighter. Later, HR took statements. Mr. Chin sent a company-wide note about professional boundaries that never named Curtis, but might as well have carried his headshot. By late afternoon, Emily's inbox held 12 messages from colleagues, from distant acquaintances, from one woman on the 6th floor who wrote simply, "Thank you for not shrinking." At 5:03 p.m., a final ping from Curtis. Subject, we could start over. I'm sorry. No ledger. No sense. 3 sentences and a question mark that tried to be a lifeline. Emily closed the laptop. She slipped on her coat, stepped into the clean winter dark, and let the door fall shut behind her. On the train home, she drafted a different kind of list, not debts and tacos, but boundaries that cost nothing and saved everything. Lock the doors you need to. Change the locks if you must. Never apologize for occupying the space you bought with your own name. And if someone ever invoices you for love, send them a receipt for your silence. When she reached her stop, the air tasted like snow. Her phone buzzed once more. Priya. Drinks? On me. No itemization. Emily smiled. Deal. She texted back and left the day behind like a bad balance finally cleared. The days after Emily ended her engagement with Daniel were strangely quiet. The house, once invaded by his family's loud demands and insults, finally felt like hers again. She would walk through the rooms, brushing her hand against the walls, reminding herself, this is mine, not theirs. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe. But the calm didn't last. 3 days later, Emily's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Daniel. Curious but cautious, she opened it, her breath caught. The subject line read, "You owe me." Inside was a neatly typed list of expenses. Every dinner he had paid for, every small gift he had given her, even gas money from trips they had taken together. It was all listed out in meticulous detail, down to the cent. At the bottom, Daniel demanded repayment, $885.36. Emily stared in disbelief. This wasn't just petty, it was cruel. It reduced their entire relationship to receipts and debts. He had taken her love, her trust, and twisted it into a balance sheet. Her chest burned with anger, but she didn't reply. She closed her laptop and told herself it was over, that he was gone, that he couldn't touch her anymore. But Daniel wasn't finished. The very next afternoon, Emily was at work when she heard murmurs spreading through the office. She turned and froze. Standing in the reception area were Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Daniel's parents. They were waving a printed copy of the same email, shouting loud enough for everyone to hear. "This woman stole from our son," Mrs. Miller bellowed, pointing a sharp finger at Emily. She drained him dry, and now she refuses to pay back what she owes. Employees exchanged shocked glances. Phones came out. Some people were recording. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks, humiliation spreading like wildfire. "They came here? To my job?" Mr. Miller stepped forward, his voice booming. "Our son supported her for years, and what does he get in return? Betrayal. Lies. She's nothing but a gold digger." Emily's hands shook, but before she could speak, a calm voice rose behind her. It was Rachel, her closest friend and colleague. She walked past Emily, straightened her blazer, and faced the Millers head-on. "Excuse me," Rachel said sharply. "Are you seriously trying to humiliate Emily in her own workplace, in front of her colleagues? Because all I see is 2 parents who don't know boundaries." The crowd whispered, some even chuckled. Mrs. Miller's face flushed red. "You don't understand," she snapped. "She owes our son money, $2,897. The absurd precision made a wave of laughter ripple through the office. Emily's humiliation shifted into something else, rage. She lifted her chin, finally finding her voice. "You want to talk about money?" Emily said, her voice steady now. Let's talk about how many times I paid for Daniel's rent when he was short. Let's talk about the bills I covered with my credit card. Let's talk about the $500 gift card I bought your husband for Christmas that no one ever mentioned again. If we're keeping score, I think your son owes me far more than $885. Gasps filled the room. Rachel pulled a pen from her bag, scribbled on a check, and without hesitation, slapped it onto the counter in front of the Millers. Here, she said coldly, $3,000, more than enough to cover your imaginary debt. Now get out before I call security. The office erupted in applause. Emily's humiliation was gone, replaced with vindication. For the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel and his family stood exposed, not as victims, but as manipulators desperate to save face. Mrs. Miller snatched up the check, trembling with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret crossing us." But as they stormed out, Emily knew the tide had turned. Their threats no longer scared her, they only revealed their desperation. Later that evening, she sat in her living room, replaying the scene in her mind. Yes, she had been humiliated. Yes, they had tried to drag her down. But she had stood tall. She had fought back. And for the first time, she realized the Millers could scream, they could demand, they could spread lies, but they could not take her dignity. The war wasn't over. But Emily wasn't the same woman they thought they could crush. She was stronger. The email storm stopped, but the weather that followed was stranger, quieter, meaner. Anonymous posts appeared on a neighborhood forum. That Emily had used men, that she was unstable, that her company should reconsider employing someone like that. The prose sounded familiar, tight-jawed, self-righteous, pretending to be civic-minded while dripping with spite. She screen-captured everything, slid it into a folder labeled smoke and mirrors, and kept her head down at work. When HR called her in, she arrived with the folder, a printed copy of Daniel's "You Owe Me" invoice, and a brief, even voice. She didn't ask for sympathy, she asked for policy. HR listened, went pale at the spectacle in reception, and promised two things: enhanced security and zero tolerance for off-site harassment that crossed into the workplace. For the first time since the engagement imploded, Emily felt the weight shift from her shoulders to a larger structure. Process, rules, consequences. That evening, Rachel poured tea like it was a ceremony. "He'll escalate before he quits," she warned. "People like that always do." Rachel was right. A week later, Daniel waited by Emily's building, the bones of his cheek sharper, the collapse behind his eyes poorly disguised as resolve. "I just want a conversation," he said, 1 foot already inside the boundary of her space. "We can reset. We can fix it." "Daniel," Emily replied, voice level, "if you take one more step toward me, I'll consider it a threat." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tremble. She let the sentence sit in the air like a tripwire. Down the block, the new security guard eyed them, radio in hand. Daniel faltered. The performance cracked, and he retreated with a muttered curse that didn't carry. The next morning, she met with a victim's advocacy attorney who specialized in restraining orders and cyber harassment. The woman's questions were brisk, compassionate. "This is a pattern," she said, tapping the printouts. "Workplace confrontation, public smearing, boundary testing. We'll petition today." They did. 48 hours later, a judge signed a temporary order. No calls, no contact, no proximity within 200 yards. Serving him the papers wasn't Emily's job or burden. A marshal handled it. Emily slept through the night for the first time in months. With the noise dampened, the rest of her life resumed its shape. Her team was prepping for a regional conference in Providence. She had the keynote demo. The morning of, she stood behind the curtain, palms warm, heart steady. Rachel squeezed her elbow. "You earned this," she whispered. Emily believed her. The demo landed cleanly, no glitches, no backtracking. She spoke with a clarity she didn't recognize as new until the audience began to lean in. Phones lifting not to record some scandal, but to capture slides, steps, ideas. Afterward, a man introduced himself, tall, composed, a calm and well-cut navy. "Ethan Parker," he said, offering a card. "That was the sharpest walkthrough I've seen this quarter. If you're willing, I'd like to pick your brain about a pilot." They sat in the lobby beneath a chandelier that held light like water. What began as questions about implementation timelines drifted: books, travel, the small rituals that keep a person intact. Ethan listened without rehearsing his next sentence. When he laughed, it was easy, present. When he asked if she'd like dinner sometime, no pressure, she heard the difference between a demand and an invitation. She said yes. The first date was simple: a neighborhood place with crooked frames and soft jazz that never asked to be noticed. Ethan asked about the house. Emily didn't shrink from it. "I thought love would make me smaller," she said, surprising herself with the candor, "so I'd fit into someone else's idea of a life. Turns out love, real love, doesn't require shrinking." "Then let's not," he answered, as if proposing a pact. The pact held. Text stayed measured. Plans were kept. When he walked her home, he didn't reach for the door without asking. When she unlocked it, she didn't apologize for the quiet. Meanwhile, the order held. Daniel's counterfeit accounts were flagged and taken down. HR documented. The attorney filed to convert the temporary order into a year-long protection. Emily didn't cheer when it was granted. She exhaled. Survival wasn't a finish line. It was a clearing where other paths began. On a sunlit Saturday, Emily and her mother, Judith, walked the river path that braided through the old mill district. The water was winter clear, the air full of honest cold. They said little for a while, the way people do when silence isn't empty. "I kept the ring," Judith admitted finally. "The one you bought yourself. I thought maybe one day you'd want to decide what to do with it, without anyone else's shadow on your hands." Emily smiled sideways. "I think I know." The next afternoon, she carried the ring to a jeweler who treated it like material, not memory. Together, they sketched a pendant, stone lowered, claws softened, a small gold loop that could live just above her heart. When she picked it up a week later, she didn't see a failed promise. She saw proof. She could transform what had been used to bind her into something she chose to wear. The house changed, too. She rehung the art, not to cover nail holes but to reframe sight lines. The master bedroom, once a battleground of entitlement, became a studio on Sundays. She wrote again, the kind of notes that begin as lists and end as sentences. One afternoon, Ethan stopped by with coffee and found her cross-legged on the floor among pages. "Working?" he asked. "Remembering," she said, "and forgetting, in proportions that feel right." They cooked that night. Garlic clicked in the pan. Basil surrendered under the knife. When a sudden rain moved across the neighborhood roofs, they let the windows stay open and the house drink the smell. After dinner, Emily washed a single glass and understood that the quiet wasn't emptiness. It was room. A final ripple arrived in the mail. A letter, Daniel's handwriting both familiar and foreign. She turned it over twice before opening. Inside, a short confession, more weary than manipulative. He regretted how things unfolded. He shouldn't have come to her workplace. He felt cornered and lashed out. There was no apology for the lies, only for the consequences. Emily slid the letter into smoke and mirrors, then slid the folder into the back of the closet. Not denial, archiving. The story was over, the record could rest. On the first truly warm day of spring, Emily and Ethan walked past a tiny park where children were staging an improvised soccer match, the smallest kid guarding the makeshift goal with the solemnity of a federal judge. They sat on a bench striped with shadow. "What do you want this year to be?" Ethan asked. "Uneventful," Emily said, and grinned at the audacity of wishing for peace. Then she amended, "No, that's too small. I want it to be mine. I want to say yes to the work that lights me up and no to the noise that doesn't. I want to host dinners and burn the bread sometimes and not care. I want to be boring and bright on the same day." Ethan nodded, as if she'd just presented a roadmap he could read. "I can work with that."